Welcome to the Buck Stops here, the official audio program of NotInHallOfFame.com, and I'm your host, Kirk Buckner, the Buck, the owner and the operator of NotInHallOfFame.com, and the sister sites. Check them out, the Fictitious Athlete Hall of Fame and the Fictitious Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Vinny Lospinuso returns, and our kid Wonder Kid, which works. He's 21, so I guess neither. Returns, and the future Hofstra University graduate and superstar in the world of broadcasting really had some interesting things to say about the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Some of you may know that they've altered what they're going to do for the senior candidates. He's not happy about it, neither am I, and we both sort of took a bit of time to look at the NFL 100, and what that is, the players all gather, and, well, not gather, literally, but they put in their votes for who they consider the best player amongst themselves. So it's a really interesting way to sort of see how they view themselves, and ranks, lists, hey, they're always fun. That's what I do. So let's bring Vinny in, and hopefully you enjoy the show. Vinny, glad to have you back. How have you been since the last 2 weeks I spoke to you?
Well, classes are going to start for me next week. That's going to be pretty exciting. But at the same time, I have no idea, half people say, "Oh, don't do schools, just have it online." The other one says, get it right there, right now. Economy needs it.
Was that your Trump impression?
What?
Was that your Trump impression?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
You need to understand that it is. Listen, I'd be willing to go another 4 more years, because that's how long it will take to do the mail-in ballots.
I think Alec Baldwin's job is safe on Saturday Night Live. So are you going to be doing this virtually, or are you going to be in person at Hofstra? How's that working for you?
I literally have no idea. Some classes are going to be synchronous. Some are going to be asynchronous. Some are going to be in person. Some are going to be not. Each class is a different set of rules.
Well, I'm glad that part of my life is well behind me. But here's the part of the life that's behind me, in front of me, beside me. And the same for you, the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Evan and I talked in the weekly show a lot about our disgust might be a strong word, of how they're going to be moving forward for the next 4 years. So for those who aren't aware, it's going to be the same as usual for the modern candidates. 5 are going to get in. But it's going to be 1 coach, 1 contributor, 1 senior. And if you're a coach, that's not a bad thing, because it wasn't always a guarantee before that you were going to get in. Same for a contributor. If you're a senior, nothing's changed all that much. Might actually argue it's worse.
Yeah, when I look at this, I say, shame on every single one of the voters that kept saying they were going to push for more seniors. They failed. They failed miserably, and they failed the families of all those seniors. They failed them all. I know that sounds a little harsh, but when you talk a big game and you do literally no campaigning and advocating for more seniors without the expense of any modern, any senior, any modern, any coach, or any contributor, you fail and you do not really truly care about what you're talking about. And that's how many fans see it. That's why many fans hate the Hall of Fame voters, because a lot of them are all talk, no action. When I look at this, they're all talk, no action again. That's what it comes across. It comes across as they don't really care about these people. Not as players, but as people. They don't seem to get the fact that the public is increasingly more hostile. They don't seem to grasp the fact that, a lot of people just want their guy, because they just want to win for themselves. They don't want other people to be happy along with them. They just want to win for themselves. And when you're dealing with a situation like now, when we're dealing with the worldwide pandemic, people are a lot more on edge than usual, and we have no idea if there's even going to be a season this year. That's very, very short-sighted, and they deserve a lot of the blame, and you shouldn't be surprised when people are ripping into them.
And I think they will. So I think I want to start off with I guess the good news. I would think, and maybe I'm mistaken here, if you're a fan of Tom Flores or Don Coryell, you've got to figure that it's in the next 2 years. But stranger things have happened.
Oh, yeah. I'd say I have literally no issue with there being one coach, one contributor here. I have literally zero issue with that. I think that is a great thing. The fact that, I know this sounds pretty crazy, but I'm actually on the Raiders fans' good side now.
Yeah, how'd that happen?
Well, the way it happened is, during quarantine, during the pandemic, you tend to be online a lot more. And you also tend to be a little bit crazy a little bit more radical. And so I spoke around these Raiders fans, and, actually a lot of them began to really mention a lot of the history. And not just, Flores, Branch, and Plunkett, but actually guys like Lester Hayes and Steve Wisniewski and guys from the AFL. I'm like, God damn, they're actually doing it. And I told some of them, hey, you should really do some of this. It should really get traction. I said, okay. And they kept putting out more AFL stuff, and it got a lot of attention. And I'm like, wow, nice, okay, we got this. And now I'm literally on their good side. They now always mention me. They say, how's everyone doing? They say we're in this together. And they were the fan base that was the most critical of there being only one senior per year. They called out the voters. They called out the committee. The Bengals fans were like this too, but the Raiders fans are now becoming, their campaigning is now even going even more aggressive and more in your face. And I like that. I'm happy that they've turned the page, and I'm happy that they're now becoming a part of us. We can make little jokes here and there, but we now know that they're on our side.
I feel like this is the end of Rocky IV, where Rocky's sort of like looking at the Russian crowd, who's now sort of supporting him and saying, if I can change and you can change, then we can all change. You being Rocky, and then the Raiders fans being the Russians.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, they're now on our side. They now are completely in support of us, and they want the same thing as us. And shockingly, it's not because their favorite player isn't in. No. They actually get the fact that the issues that many fans have is actually a lot deeper than just my favorite player's not in. It has to do with seniors being blackballed. It has to do with issues with the voters. It has to do with issues with, the committee. Don't forget the Hall of Fame Village as well plays a part into it. There's a whole bunch of reasons. It's not cut and dry. It's pretty deep, honestly. Whoever says to you it's just because their favorite player's not in, you don't know these fans.
Mm-hmm. So, again, we should just also mention that this is not going forward forever. This is going to be the process for the next 4 years anyway. Now, There's a few things that I sort of want to sort of like go through, going back towards the player selections for the veterans. There were 20 people who were finalists, so 10 got in, 10 didn't. Do you think that the 10 that didn't have a leg up on other people who probably should have been considered, like a Ken Anderson or a Roman Gabriel or an L.C. Greenwood? What do you think? Do you think like someone like Drew Pearson, who didn't get in and was a finalist, does he have a leg up over an L.C. Greenwood?
Oh, absolutely. I think without a doubt that all these 10 guys, whether it be Gilwig, Isbell, Llewellyn, Novus, Craig, Pearson, Gradishar, I said Novus, all of them, all 10 of them, they all have a leg up on Ken Anderson and Ken Riley and just Roman Gabriel, S.D. Greenwood, Chuck Howley, Otis Taylor, what have you. They have a leg up on every single one of them. In fact, I predict that all of the 4 seniors each of the years They will all be from the 2020 class. I think, without a doubt, Randy Gradishar will be one of them. I also think that Drew Pearson will definitely be one of them. As for the other ones, I feel like we'll have one person from the pre-merger era that will be it. My guesses would be probably be Weistert, but I wouldn't hold out hope for. I wouldn't leave out someone like Dilwig, but that's just from my perspective, what I see. I think Cliff Branch also has a really good chance. That's just how I see it.
Yeah, I kind of think so too. I agree with that assessment. I'm not certain that it's impossible that somebody else sort of sneaks in, providing it's somebody worthy like an Anderson or a Greenwood. I can say obviously I'm pretty partial on those two since I keep bringing their names up. Yeah, but it'll be really curious going forward. We know this much: no matter what they decide, there's going to be criticism. Some of it valid, some of it not. But I think a lot of valid criticism definitely goes towards, again, David Baker. I do find that as much as he seems like one of the nicest guys on television, one of those smiles that's going to light up a room, sort of that friendly giant uncle that you just sort of like want to hang out with and hear some stories. He also likes to see a lot of himself on television.
Oh, he really does. Because the one thing that people really criticize the way they handle the 15 the 10 seniors, 3 contributors, 2 coaches is not the selections. Aside from the coaches, the issue that people really had was how long they dragged that out and how David Baker was often on TV. And that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, whether that be regular fans or people that were snubbed, like a Pearson or Gradishar or what have you.
Well, this feels like the 4th time I'm going to mention this on a show, but I'm going to mention it again. Just the amount of heartbreak that Drew Pearson had to have during that broadcast. Because when Harold Carmichael was in the NFL.com studios accepting his gold jacket from David Baker. Because that happened early in the show. And if Harold Carmichael is flown there or arrives there, however he got there, it doesn't really matter. Pearson at that point had to know he's not getting in, but he's got to wait another 2 hours. Well, maybe, because it's television. You don't know how they're going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's one of these instances where for a business, it's one thing. For a show, it's one thing. For entertainment, it's one thing. But again, you're literally handling the reputation of someone's life, because that's how I particularly see the selections. I know that it could be fun to debate certain cases, but they need to really understand that when it comes to fans and especially even players, your reputation is in the hands of these selectors. Your literal reputation, the way you are going to be perceived for the rest of your life, is going to be in the hands of these people. That's why there's just a lot of animosity involved because of that. I know it could be fun. I get that. But you need to also take it really, really seriously and not just treat it like a game. Because if you treat it like a game, you get the reactions of Pearson and you get the reactions of all the fans that follow.
Well, and that was really the problem, though. I don't think anyone really enjoyed the way they dragged it out. You and I were both watching that live on the network. We're watching other people's reaction. I don't see anyone who was saying, "Oh, I really love the fact that they're making us wait." Nobody. No,
because, and though some people could say, "Oh, it's good to see some of these people go make it next year," even the ones that are not alive. What do you think Dilwig's family thought of it? What do you think Branch's family thought of it? To wait that long? And hell, Branch just died the year before. So that's got to hurt really hard. That's why, especially when someone dies the year before, Bobby Dillon was another example. He made it. But when someone dies the year before, you have to be very, very cautious because that could really, really open up very tender wounds. That's why it gets very, very sensitive.
Sadly, I think we're going to see something like that again if that ever comes up.
Yeah.
Because people were watching, so it's a ratings business.
Yes, but we also know that in this day and age, while that is the case, but we're also seeing the ripple effects of what people think in general about certain things, whether that be online or even in public, because I don't know if it's a pandemic, I don't know if it's a protest or just the state of America, but I have noticed that more and more people, regardless of what your occupation is willing to speak out about certain and just go lash out. And the reactions are usually much, much worse and much, much more angry. Legitimately angry, not just angry because they're biased against my team, or like legitimately angry.
And I think you're right about that. There's a lot more people on edge. It's a little bit. I don't see it day to day from where I am in Barbados necessarily, but I'm certainly in tune with what's going on in the U.S. and Canada, my home country, and the world in general. It's a different place right now, and our escape. I don't want to say that it's necessarily being taken away from us, but it's not as much of an escape as it used to be.
Oh, no, not at all. Because the big reason as to why I want to see an increase from 8 to 10, I know that some could say, oh, it makes it special. Listen, that doesn't work in today's world. You need to understand that when there's literal reaction, and all that could be good entertainment, the reality is people tend to hold grudges a lot more openly than in the past. And I understand that there could be an idea that maybe most of the moderns get the money, so we'll go in. But the truth of the matter is, you don't know how long this pandemic's going to last in America. The U.S. isn't really known for the U.S. does not have a reputation of handling this pandemic really well. And if we don't have a season, most likely we're not going to have a college football season this year.
Doesn't look like it.
And we might. And if we have an NFL season, it's going to be abbreviated. When you have a shortened amount of it, people tend to want more of something else. But when they see that something else is the same, if not more lessered or more decreased, or either the same, they tend to get a lot more angry. They tend to get a lot more vicious. And I thought that maybe for 2 years, they could have an idea of having 6 people, have the contributor and the coach and two seniors. But then for the moderns, you have your 5 moderns already. But then I think a great idea would be have another modern or 6 modern that's decided on by the public, because as we know, the Hall has on their website, they let people choose who they think it would be, but people just use that to just choose who they want. And Clay Matthews was on there and Leroy Butler, and neither of them made it.
Yeah, those two wasn't too bad. What was the other Packer who was like in the top 3 who had no business being there?
Nick Collins.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I was blanking on who that was, and rightfully so, because he's someone who shouldn't be considered. No disrespect to Nick Collins, a fine football career. Nick Collins will probably tell you he's not a Pro Football Hall of Famer.
Of course, but I'd say for that, yes. But for the legitimate cases, it's fine. But I think when you give people the option to vote, people go all in because they care so much. And I say, even though we give the Rock Hall a lot of crap, as we should, one thing I do like is that they do have the fan vote. And now, granted, the fan vote doesn't win all the time, but the fact that people have a choice for who they want, I think that's very, very impressive, because the argument is, yes, while there is a bias for the more popular players and whatnot, it's not always the case, because at the end of it, Steve Tasker got a lot of votes, and Zach Thomas got a lot of votes, and obviously Polamalu got a lot of votes. But then again, everyone knew he was going to be first out anyway, so it didn't really matter. I feel like for this, I get the arguments against it, but I feel like with the reaction from people more and more, I feel like if you have the 15 finalists and the winner of the fan vote makes it automatically. It's not shot down by any of the voters. Because you get shot down by voters from what fans think that's a bad look. So why not? Let's have, like, Leroy Butler win the fan vote. Is there really any issue of Leroy Butler winning the fan vote? Now you could say, oh, it's a Packer.
Sure, but let's back up here, though. So when they put up the fan vote, and I said this last year, I don't know if it was on a show with you or with Evan or just maybe in general on Twitter, just as someone who owns a website, sometimes you're just going to throw shit at a wall just to sort of like drag traffic. Because if they're getting better traffic, they can sell better ad space on that.
That's true.
So they're putting that up there, and it doesn't really matter what sort of anyone comes up with. I think the fact that it was so Packer and Browns heavy, and again, this is no disrespect to some of the good ones, like vote for Clay Matthews. I can make a case for him myself. I can make a case for Leroy Butler. I can't make a case for Nick Collins. So when you put that stuff up, and that it actually, so what that group that sort of pushed for that particular individual, you're pushing against them ever considering what a fan vote's going to mean.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, like, you also have the votes out there. I mean, yeah, you can do it for advertising, but at the same time, it makes fans want the people even more. And when it doesn't happen, it just creates way more animosity. I would say, I understand for avenue, but I feel like with all this stuff, you should probably make the votes legitimate, like actual votes, not just for revenue, because it creates a bad look.
Okay, so here's something I just thought of. So how about this? You have your fan vote, and it's a fan vote of just people who have never been a semifinalist. The winner of that becomes a semifinalist and gets in that room for discussion. Because if you leave it up to that, just because of the whole Collins situation, you can get an online push for some crazy stuff. In the brief time I was watching American Idol, I mean, everyone's voting for Sanjaya at one point in time. You just don't know what group, what radio station, what online thing just to throw off the apple cart just for fun. I mean, there's a reason those guys are in that room, but at the same time, yes, you cannot ignore a fan group.
Yeah, like, I think Nick Collins is more of like a one-time situation. I think that's more so because the Packers were, and also the Browns, were the only two that were actively pushing for people to vote for this. But all the other ones, they really pushed. I mean, none of the other ones. I mean, the Patriots didn't do it. The Steelers didn't do it. And if they did, the Packers were the ones that pushed heavily. I think, if they all pushed equally for it, I think you'd probably get a bit of a different result. It might sway a little bit more to the popular teams.
That can't happen because there's not equal fan bases. There's just not.
That is true. That's a fact. Yeah.
Hell, I was in when I was living out in Western Alberta. There was this bar I used to go to because this one little area they'd let me put on whatever I wanted. So I was actually watching. I think it was because they'd always it's a bar in Western Mountain Canada, so everything's hockey. So they'd let me put on NFL at night, so I could watch that. And then there were these random people who came up from this older couple up from where were they from? From Wyoming, and they were happy that I had the Packers game on. I mean, certain fan bases, the Packers, the Cowboys, the Steelers, they have a national presence. The Texans don't. Not that they have any kind of representation past, but what would be a better example of an older team that just doesn't translate nationally? The Rams.
The Cardinals. Yeah, so I mean, like, those... there's just going to be so many great players from teams that just don't have the fan base. I mean, what's the joke right now? That there's going to be no fans, and some of the players say, "Well, I wonder how that's going to work out." Just call up your friends who plays on the Chargers; they can tell you. Yeah, that is true, but that's why the reason why I'm saying that is mainly because Cody's barking again. The reason why I say that it would just be one out of the six. It would.
Well, I guess
the votes. Like,
that's why maybe sort of saying let's throw the bone to the semifinals, because like when you mentioned the Rock Hall, the fan vote's great, but it's always been coincidental that the voters sort of go with that, because you've got your committee that puts together the list, but they don't necessarily, they have their one vote. That vote goes out to hundreds of people out there.
Yeah.
So it's been reflecting what the people have sort of said, but it didn't last year for the first time in 6, I think, since the Rock vote sort of came out. So that was all pure coincidental. Now, do the people who were voting on that sort of take that in consideration? Some might. I don't know about all of them, but it's not a committee that decides who gets in. It's a committee that decides who's on the ballot.
Yeah, it's like when it comes to a lot of this stuff, I think you're just seeing I have spoke with more people that want to see. Well, increasingly, I've seen more that say, you could say player and coach, but just people in general want to see more, have a voice with it. I think it's just because just a lack of trust in the people in charge, whether that be David Baker or any of the voters. Mm-hmm. And when I say the voters, I'm going to call them out by name. Rick Gosselin, mm-hmm. Ira Kaufman, who's no longer with the board, right. Frank Cooney, Jeff Lakewold, Broncos fans' favorite. That's sarcasm, obviously. Ron Borges and Dan Pompei. You guys say you want more seniors. You guys wanted more seniors. You kept saying it. But when push comes to shove, you didn't actually campaign. Stuff like that is why people don't trust you. This is why some people feel like they got to put it in their own hands. Stuff like that is why you see more fan campaigns. I definitely get it. But I think, and yes, I'm a little bit leery about fans too, and I'm aware about the Pro Bowl stuff. But even then, Pro Bowl is only one part of the puzzle. It's only just like a third of the votes, I believe. I would say, I do like the idea of giving the fans a bone, making them semifinals. I think that could work.
Yeah, it's just something I just thought of now. Just only because right now, based on sort of the discrepancy of fan bases, I'd be too hesitant to sort of give a power to put one person in. But I think a voice should be heard. I think they could even go the route of what the Rock Hall does. Because like when the Pro Football Hall of Fame put out that fan vote, they put out the fan vote for all the preliminary list, right? They didn't do it for the finals.
Yeah. They did it for all of them. Like they still had it for the semifinalists. That's where Clay Matthews really got a push. Mm-hmm. But then the following round, he was off. It was each one. Donald Driver had the most. He didn't make the semifinalist list. Then Clay Matthews had the one. He didn't make the finalist. And then Leroy Butler had the top. He didn't make the Hall. So each instance of the fan vote winning, per se, per round, none of their guys made it to the next round.
And I think that's sort of part of it. It is something to sort of think about going forward. Before we look at the NFL 100, there's 2 new members of the Pro Football Hall of Fame committee. Evan and I talked about that on the weekly show. I sort of want your opinion on this. Bill Polian is one of the new members, a Hall of Famer himself. I don't think anyone can criticize his credentials, 6-time Executive of the Year.
Yeah. I would say it's important to have that room with the voice from the executive. However, it's the executive that the internet really, really, really hates. Like, really hates.
Well, they can hate him all they want. I mean, he's more than qualified. He's actually more qualified. Yeah, but sorry, go ahead.
More than qualified, but it's more so because of the race aspect. Many people are never going to forget, and they're always going to keep reminding him that he thought Lamar Jackson should have been a wide receiver. And yet there were other people as well, but Bill Polian especially was very hard on that.
And he can be wrong, and that's okay.
What?
He can be wrong, and that's okay. I mean, if he's in that room years later, and hopefully he's not, because I think there should be term limits.
No. Now I'm looking at this, and I say, man, like, you have a guy that many people like to say is literally racist. And I understand, obviously, do I think he is racist? I don't know. It's like, it's very, very touchy in today's world. I mean, some could be silently racist. I can't really comment on that.
Well, there's been a long time, and you mentioned Ken Riley earlier. There's been a long time football bias, which I would have hoped would have been gone long before Lamar Jackson declared himself eligible for the draft, which was only 2 years ago, where they would look at a black quarterback and try to convert them into a wide receiver or a safety. Ken Riley was such a player. Now, you and I both think that he's got the credentials as a Hall of Fame. Sorry, no, he was a cornerback. My apologies. But still, there's still that. It wasn't all that long ago where Anton Randall was tearing it up at the University of Indiana, and he had to convert himself to a wide receiver. But not that it's really the same thing. Eric Crouch, white man, Heisman Trophy winner, did the same thing because they told him he wasn't going to make it as a quarterback either.
Michael Robinson, don't forget either. He had to be converted to a fullback.
Yeah, and it's that's the sort of thing that sort of happens in football. I'd like to think that we're well past that. You and I have joked, and I've joked this with other friends. I mean, 20 years ago, you're looking for your white quarterback and your black running back. Now, look, the best quarterback in the league is black. The best running back in the league is white, and Christian McCaffrey, in my opinion.
It's ridiculous. The world's turned upside down. But I would say, I know that many people could say, "Oh, it's not racist or lying." Listen, the players would tell you that the league is racist, and I'm not trying to say
players are right.
I can't say it's racist, but the people that play say it's racist.
Well, I think there's a certain element to that. Otherwise, they wouldn't feel the need. Well, I personally think it is, and I'm sort of glad we're sort of touching on this. Yeah, and again, we're two white guys discussing this, so we got to put that in proper perspective. But the fact that there are so many black players that haven't translated into an appropriate amount of black coaches is concerning to me. Now,
it is.
But that's my take on it. Now, going back to this, and why I'm sort of glad this sort of came up. Bill Polian isn't the only new member of the committee. Lisa Salters is. Sideline reporter, been covering the NFL, since 2000, I believe. If I'm correct, and I might be wrong, Vinny, you'd probably know better than I believe she's the first African-American woman to be on this committee. Am I correct?
Yes, she is. Now, I know that I spoke to some historians that were like, they said that, Lisa Salters was added just for clout. She's not truly qualified as Polian, but I heard some say that, I don't know, like, I like Lisa Salters. Now, she's interviewed a lot of the players. I think it can be a bit of a perspective, but my question when it comes to the selection, the biggest one, is not the loss of Vito Solino and Ira Kaufman. And it's not even the addition of Lisa Salters or Bill Polian. It's the fact that Larry Michael's still on that.
Okay.
That's my big...
Okay, well, can you explain why?
Remember the Washington Post article that documented the Washington football team? Yeah, that's their new name. Sexual harassment claims where 17 women came forward and highlighted specifically about the massive harassment and misogyny and just perverseness of the Redskins organization.
Okay.
Larry Michael was heavily included amongst the three main men. In fact, it just so happened that he retired from the team just before the article came out. How coincidental. Just like how those two other guys were also fired just before it came out.
That's
Again,
a fair
what a
point.
coincidence.
No, I didn't know that. And that's a very good point.
And the reason why I'm saying this is because you have Lisa Salters in that room now. You have a few other women. You have a couple other women in that room. And many people want to see Amy Trask made the Hall of Fame. For these women in the room specifically, what message does it send when you have a accused sexual harasser making the decisions on these players? What does that say?
No, I've never thought of that, and you're 1,000% right, Vinny. Evan and I, we were talking about term limits, and I am advocating for term limits on all of these committees and all of these voters because, like you just said, is Bill Polian more qualified than Lisa Salters? Are people saying that? Yeah, of course he is. Is Lisa Salters qualified to be in that room? Absolutely.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, but there's no reason why you can't take some of these people in that room and just rotate them out because you're going to find some other people with different points of view who have different qualifications but are have something to offer. And I want to go back to an article that was making its rounds, and I apologize, I forget who it was from and who it was by. And you and I both sort of had the same opinion, but I'm kind of changing my perspective a bit on this. It was how the Pro Football Hall of Fame, most of the voters are predominantly white, which I thought, my first initial gut reaction was, so what? Now, because their results I haven't seen any racial bias in what they're voting on. Having said that, if I've got an issue with the amount of black people as coaches, I should have an issue with the amount of black people being represented in that room. So my initial thought was wrong. As I've been thinking about it more, it should be more representative of the people who are actually covering the sport, and let the result fall where it may. So that's my opinion now. It's sort of altered a bit from about a month ago.
Yeah, it's like, again, verbal abuse, sexual harassment. I mean, again, you could say that, the Hall doesn't really care about that. It's not a big issue. They're not going to listen to what the fans think. Listen, this has nothing to do with the fans. That's to do with your own voters. Your own voters. The ones that people always talk about. There are some women in that room. Okay?
Well, sometimes you just do things because it's the right thing to do.
What? And not only that, I have some question for some of these voters. A lot of you are journalists. You know for a fact that he's a sexual harasser. How come you don't advocate for it? Why don't you? You don't really. Does that mean you don't really care about these people? Does that mean you don't really care about wanting to have? You're all for social change, things for the better. Peter King's like that a lot. But when it comes to people in your own room, you're not really willing to advocate for it. You're not willing to speak up for it.
Yeah, and that's sort of where the Old Boys Network does exist.
Like seriously, you. This is why people can't stand Peter King. This is why when Peter King made that comment, fans just hate us because we don't elect our favorite player. He let the Sharks in. He threw chum at the Sharks, and the Sharks just came on eating. They just went all out. And I was so happy because, again, you're all for equality. You're all for letting women's voices. But yet, when it comes to people in your own network, you don't speak out. You deserve to be labeled a hypocrite. And that's what you are, Peter. You're a hypocrite. I have a lot of respect for you as a writer. Well, there's a reason why a lot of people can't stand you. I'm not hating on Peter King's work. I think he's a great writer, but at the same time, stuff like this just questions people's legitimacy. I mean, people question the legitimacy of a lot of things nowadays. But these black people question the legitimacy of the Hall because the people that should speak out, the ones that speak out online, they talk a big game, but they never campaign. The base cares more than the people in charge. That's what I always say. because so often, no matter if it's politics, no matter if it's stuff with sports or anything, the people, the fans, are the ones that truly care about these things, and they actually care about these players as people. But the ones inside don't.
No,
they don't.
There's some validity to that. Let's move on to something a little bit more fun here. The reason actually you wanted to set up a show in the first place, but it was a week and a half ago, the NFL, the players actually, it's presented by NFL.com. So a lot of people, myself included actually, when this first came out 10 years ago or so, but it's voted on by the players. It's not by the public. It's by the players, for the players, where they're deciding who the best players are for the year. And you've been you're very interested in this. You're compiling all of that when you're looking at your personal rankings for Hall of Fame opinions, because now we're talking about what the actual players think, and this always is. It's fun. Lists are fun. That's why I have a damn website in the first place, all based on lists and whatnot. And there's some things that sort of stuck out, some that didn't. And Lamar Jackson, according to the NFL players, is the best NFL player at this moment. Do you agree?
After this, people got super insanely. They were tearing into it and saying, "Oh, it's not legitimate because Patrick Mahomes isn't on there." Look, big reason why that's also the case is because the Chiefs won the Super Bowl.
Well, he is on there. He's just number 4.
Yeah, I mean, he was also number 4 last year. I wouldn't go too crazy about it because when you're someone like Mahomes or Jackson, something like this is not really going to affect the perspective of what people think. It's more so about the ones below that it does. Now, I'd say, look, players always want to have a voice. And many fans say they want to have players have a voice, but they usually mean players that voice the same exact opinion as them when it comes to a lot of it. And this is a big example of it because people just tend to complain that, player X isn't on here because there's a bias. I even saw Louis Riddick claim this whole massive conspiracy theory that players don't want to see Carson Wentz be successful. Like, Louis, why do you even have a job at ESPN? Seriously, if you're going to say that.
Well, but there could. It's at the end of the day, whether it's so-called experts, writers, executives, fans, players, it's people voting on people, and if you hate another guy. Like, I'm sure a lot of baseball writers hate Curt Schilling. You're not necessarily going to vote for him just because that's your little bitty way to say fuck you. If you love someone, if he's your friend, you're going to vote him. It's hard. I mean, so as much as you've got, if you're a player, you've got a far more nuanced opinion. You also, in some ways, are more clouded.
The players tend to be the issue that I have. Like, I mix on it. Like, in theory, you would say, writers are more neutral. They
not
could be
always.
bigger assholes, too.
Yeah, not always. Absolutely. That's why I use the Curt Schilling example. Because as much as Curt Schilling is definitely a dick, he's also definitely a Baseball Hall of Fame worthy player.
Like, I mean, stuff like that is why people increasingly hate the media. Like, you're only giving the other side more ammo to use against you. That's what you're doing. Especially when Schilling is connected with the right side of the aisle, and you're just going to increase that animosity that other side has. Because let's be real, even though you can say, it doesn't matter, baseball has a very conservative audience, too. And you're also, not only are you pissing off Schilling, you're also pissing off them.
In many cases, yes. But I mean, but that's life, though, Vinny. Like, if you've been on, you've flown a lot in your life?
Yeah.
Okay. So, or like cross borders, like the biggest gatekeepers, right? And that's what a lot of these voters are. Sometimes are the biggest assholes. Why? Because they got a little bit of power, and if you piss them off, they're going to use it. So, like, that's sort of like why you just sort of like go through the gate and all that. You keep your mouth shut. Whenever you're crossing through customs. My dad can't keep his mouth shut. He's always a smart ass, and he always complains why he's always pulled over. Why? Because he couldn't stop. He couldn't dial down his sarcasm.
Well, that's just how some people are. I would say that you're seeing more people like that, but I would say it's usually in response to the people that pull them over.
Well, right, but it's just little things like that. I think baseball voters are a little bit more petty. But so I want to get some visceral responses from you on this. So Jackson, number one, I certainly think he was the best player last year, deserving of the MVP. I loved watching him at Louisville, and I was so happy that he got that opportunity early in Baltimore. Wilson at number two. I don't consider him the second best quarterback in football, but what do you think?
This is based on of last season. When it comes to Russell Wilson, no, he is not underrated. Stop saying he's underrated, guys.
Oh, he's a great player, but I don't think he's the second best quarterback.
Oh, no, I don't think so either, but I'm just saying that for people that keep saying, this shows how underrated Russell Wilson is. Shut up. He's not underrated. He is, if anything, he might be a tad overrated because how many people keep saying he's underrated. It's like how people say that Drew Brees is super underrated. Listen, Brees is rated just fine. Everyone knows he's great.
Well, yeah. Well, Drew Brees will always sort of suffer because he's doing the same thing in an era with less Super Bowl championships than Tom Brady. But Drew Brees his legacy is just fine. He'll do okay. So the highest rated wide receiver here, no surprise here from the players, Michael Thomas, New Orleans Saints.
Of course, he was the AP Offensive Player of the Year. Everyone knew it, and he had the most receptions in a season. And the fact that he also led the league in receiving yards too. I mean, it was obvious. It was an obvious. He should be the best wide receiver ranked this year because he was the best wide receiver ranked this year. Mm-hmm. Plain and simple.
Yeah, no, definitely. One that I'm a little curious about, actually, they're number 9 and number 10. I'm really curious to see how they perform next season. Stephon Gilmore, who out of nowhere has put himself into a Hall of Fame conversation, because anyone who's a Defensive Player of the Year, they've got him ranked number 9. Is he going to be the same player for the Patriots this year? I don't know. You didn't see a lot of that in his first few years in Buffalo.
Yeah, he didn't. He was a good player, but not really someone you would say would be great. But then he got that big contract with the Patriots. He didn't really do a whole lot in his first season with the Patriots. But the following season, oh man, he lit it up. And the following season, he was just as good. No, he was even better.
Well, yeah, it's the Defensive Player of the Year. So I'm just wondering, how, and I'm not calling him a fluke by any means. I don't mean to sort of insinuate that, but usually this isn't sort of the pattern where you get this good at this stage of your career. So for Gilmore, I don't want to call it a make or break year in terms of the Hall. But it is a very, very big year for him. Derrick Henry at number 10 is one that's sort of interesting. I know he won the rushing title. I'm not all in on Derrick Henry, though, personally. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. I mean, running back is a position that people have very mixed feelings on. I mean, the wide receivers are the ones that the reason why a lot of them are so vocal is because a lot of them feel slighted for one way, shape, or form. But for running back, I mean, he was fantastic this year. Let's don't get it twisted. Derrick Henry was phenomenal.
Sure.
This season.
I'm not doubting his rank for and as a look back. I'm not all in on him going forward, and I should have worded that better. And I'm more than happy to be wrong on that.
Oh yeah, I feel exactly the same way as you. With me, I feel very mixed with Derrick Henry. He did sign a 4-year contract with the Titans. However, when it comes to running back, they tend to break down a little bit as they age. That's why you see so many running backs by committee. The reason also, not only that, are the Titans going to be the same team next year? Because keep in mind, they snuck into the playoffs as the 6th seed. Now with the 7th seed, they have a better chance. But that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make it to the AFC Championship game again or even further. It could also mean that more people have seen film on you and are willing to dissect your game a little bit more. And that could create a bit of a down year for Henry and Tannehill and the Tennessee Titans in general.
Yeah, so 2 more things I want to sort of like get your quick take on. George Kittle is the highest rated tight end by quite a bit. Number 7, Kelsey of Kansas City, number 18. No argument here. I think Kittle just had just a breakout year. I don't see any reason why he can't repeat that.
I mean, George Kittle, there's nothing negative I could say about George Kittle. I love his game. I love him as a person. I love his personality. I love his energy. I love his story. I love the fact he was a steal for them. I like how he's essentially the face of the offensive side of the ball. I mean, there's nothing negative I could say about George Kittle. I just love everything about him.
Okay. And the one thing, because this is your wheelhouse more than anything else when it comes to pro football and the Hall of Fame, there's no special teamers on this list. Does that bother you, or do you think this is accurate?
I'm not really shocked. I mean, that's usually the case. I mean, there's been only really one, technically 2 instances of a special teamer even making it. 2015, when Adam Vinatieri made it, and in, I think it was like 2016 or 17, maybe even someone else, it's when Justin Tucker just barely missed the 100. I think it was like 101. Doesn't really bother me. It's not going to affect my feeling on whether or not I think Slater is deserving or Tucker or Hecker. That's not really going to affect it. I mean, when it comes to a lot of the players, they generally don't. They focus more on their side of the ball than the other one. And even for special teamers, they tend to be a bit more neutral when it comes to it. So I don't really have an issue with here.
Okay, fair enough. And give me one player on that list where that rank went. You're looking at that and went, huh? Well, it doesn't matter where it is. Anywhere from 1 to 100.
Check any of them.
Any of them. I can give you mine while you're looking at that.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's actually pretty far down. And for me, maybe just maybe there's a bias. Maybe there's just something I just don't quite understand why he'd be this low. Number 78, Tyron Smith, offensive tackle, Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, that questioned me too. With me, I'm going to look more at the back of it. I'm going to go with that's a bit of a tough one. I would personally say that I might do Allen Robinson, something like that. I mean, I think I'm not one of these people that are going to go all up in arms because of it. Because someone is lower than they quote unquote should be or anything else. I'm really kind of neutral when it comes to it. But I would definitely say that if the players had the voice, had the vote when it came to, but I would say if the players had a vote when it came to Offensive Rookie of the Year, we know that Josh Jacobs would have won instead of Kyler Murray.
Yeah, one thing also too, and I'll leave with this thought. Because I was watching when all this was sort of being presented online, one of the big I don't know if backlash is the right word, but I guess we'll say backlash. Kirk Cousins at number 58, quarterback, Vikings. A lot of people thought he wasn't deserving of that spot.
Cousins had a great season last year. What are you talking about?
No, I agree. I thought like that was an interesting backlash for a quarterback who I think is pretty good.
I think it's because of Cousins, just the reputation the media gives him, and again, I'd love all the conspiracy theories that Carson Wentz got for not making it. I wish Matt Ryan had that stuff too.
Matt Ryan he's probably the one guy if he were to say, you know what, I really don't think about it, I believe him.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure he's one of those guys. Like, I'd say with his Hall of Fame case, it's not going to be by the fan vote either. He's one of those guys that's going to ride heavily, especially on the analytic committee. I know I know for a fact he's going to be one of those analytic ball pushes.
Yeah, because Ryan's not on this. He's not on this list at all, is he?
No, hell, even in 2017, right after he won the MVP, he was ranked number 10. That's the lowest an MVP ever was.
Because Julio Jones will tell you how great Matt Ryan is, and they're making each other good. If anyone's sort of thinking that this is not a case of Randy Moss making Dante Culpepper look like a Pro Bowler, which he did. It's not the same thing. Matt Ryan has the skills. Matt Ryan will never promote Matt Ryan. That's just who he is.
I think the reason as to why people don't really talk about Matt Ryan a whole lot is probably just how he's not really boisterous online. He's not really someone who's really self-promoting. Hell, if anyone promotes him, it's me and either Ryan and probably Brian Michael. In case you don't know who that guy is, he is known for being a very hard statistician. I know that there's a lot of people that say, "Oh, he doesn't really watch the games. He doesn't really truly know how it is." Maybe you should ask him that question, and he'll respond in a pretty like nail to the face kind of way. He goes, if anyone's gonna prop up him other than me, it's gonna be him.
And let's again reiterate to the people out there who might be listening to this for the first time: Vinny's not a Falcons fan.
I'm not.
So you're not doing this as a homer. Because if you follow Vinny on Twitter, it's Vinny Lospinuso 91. I should know this.
Yes, he won after Sonic the Hedgehog, my favorite video game franchise. It was created in 1991. That's why it had 91 there. I was born in 1999.
Got it. All right. So if you follow, if there's anything about Matt Ryan that sort of like just talks about like where he is and how, and statistically what he's done compared to some of the other great quarterbacks. And again, we're talking former MVP. Wasn't his fault that they lost the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
we could have done better, obviously. Could have got one more score. But still, I mean, Matt Ryan is, and as a diehard Saints fan, I know how good Matt Ryan is.
Yeah, man, you're great to tell you how great Matt Ryan is.
No, absolutely. But other players don't necessarily talk about him, and that's sort of interesting because you look at some of these other quarterbacks on this. Josh Allen is here. I'd much rather face Josh Allen than Matt Ryan. No disrespect to Josh Allen.
I mean, come on. I mean, it's one of those instances, like, really, Josh Allen is not better than Matt Ryan. What the hell are you smoking?
Well, no. But
even Madden knows that Matt Ryan's great. Now, people take Madden. I personally look at a bit of Madden rankings, too, and I know people get snubbed and whatnot, but I take everything into consideration. I mean, with Madden rankings and NFL Top 100, yes, I take that in consideration because, okay, what does the video game community think of it? Okay, what do the players think of it? What do the fans think of it? What do the stats people think? I just look at every single one of these avenues because we just say, just watch film. That's all that matters. That's all that matters. It's ignorant because even when you watch film, everyone has a different perspective on it. So you just look at each single one as opposed to just film. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, everyone was watching a lot of film, and they were convinced that Jamarcus Russell was a legitimate NFL quarterback at the number one pick. But he can throw 70 yards from his knees. And how many times is he going to do that in a game? Yeah. What's that? None?
I had some people keep telling you, the fact you didn't watch the guys the fact you don't watch the guys that you promote tells you all you do is read Wikipedia. You don't truly have real sources. And no, don't look at any articles. No. Look at the books at the library in the reference. Like, those are the real, that's where you really get it. Like, come on, man.
Well, NFL to me is like, it's where coaches matter the most, but it's also where coaches can outthink themselves. That doesn't happen necessarily in baseball and hockey or basketball combined nearly as much as it does in football because you can outsmart yourself so many times, and that's scouts too.
Well, that's why I love the coaches section this year. But when I look at this and like saying, I heard some people say, if you go in that room, you'll know. They'll know you don't truly watch what you do. Yeah, because because it's easy for people to find film of LaVerne Dillwig from the 1920s. Like,
Well,
really,
it's the same type of thinking that if a quarterback is listed like or if he's 2 inches shorter than the norm, like who was that Giants quarterback who became the Bachelor, who's now Jesse Palmer? Became a 3rd-round quarterback, and he played in Florida, and he's always on my radar because he's a Canadian, and he was from Ottawa, where I spend a bit of time. So you'd see article upon article, then I'd watch him play at Florida. It's like, he sucks. Yes, he's 6'5", he's got that arm, he looks like the perfect quarterback. He's not the perfect quarterback. He can't, because he'll miss the target by 10 yards every time. Not every time, obviously, I'm exaggerating, of course, but his end result, despite being the quarterback that you would sort of put, if you were to like build that in Frankenstein's lab, it would have came out Jesse Palmer. The only problem is Palmer couldn't do it. Same with Jamarcus Russell. Drew Brees is not that guy. You building that in Frankenstein's lab, it's not coming out looking like Drew Brees. Which one's going to be the Hall of Famer? Drew Brees.
It's why I don't really. It's why I'm not as big as watch film only. I'm not one of those people because unlike some of them, I actually think outside the box. How about that?
That's where I'm saying sometimes you outsmart yourself in the game of that, and you see it over and over and over again. Because they're not necessarily looking at what sort of happened on the field; they're looking at what sort of They're looking at, but look at this. Look at the combine. Oh, he ran a 4.4. Okay, but did he tackle anybody when he's running the 4.4? You know.
No, all you do the 40-yard dash is just running in a straight line. Okay, what about the times when they're running back and forth and they're doing cones? And even then, your college film is not going to reflect the same way as you on the NFL field, as well as the practice. And the same thing with people, too. Like, you can't just go off how a person is just by how they are on TV. You can't do that. Oh, but it's on film. No. Look at Ellen right now. Ellen could be all super nice, but then you look behind the scenes and say, wow.
I've been telling my wife for years she was a fraud. I don't know how we got on Ellen, but I've been saying that for years because this stuff's been happening from other comics and other writers on that this woman was a fraud. Yeah,
I mean, to be fair, I mean, like what Charlie White, critical Penguin Zio said. Yeah, I follow him. I'd say go watch him. He's funny. He's actually pretty honest about a lot of things. When someone, like you said, when someone's whole brand is being nice, then they're probably frauds. Like, it's one of those instances where, yeah, you can look on film as much as you want, but it's not always going to be a reflection of how the person really is. And the same thing when it comes to film. Who is that player on the Eagles who had that phenomenal combine, but when it came to the pros, he stunk it up?
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I mean, like, I'm not saying here the combine and all the stuff doesn't matter. It does, but you've got to put everything in a greater perspective. You just do. And again, I don't know why it went from the NFL to Ellen. Although Ellen's a Saints fan, so I'll give her that.
Mike Mamula, that's his name. He was in case you don't know who that is, he was the edge rusher from Boston College. That a big reason he had good film, but a big reason why he made it to the 7th overall pick was because of how great his combine was. Mm-hmm. That's the big reason as to why that was the case. But at the same time, when it came to actually playing, he was just okay. And after his contract with the Eagles was up, no one signed him afterwards.
It's also one of the reasons why I love football. I mean, it doesn't matter what your team is. Your team can go 4-12 and then win the Super Bowl the next year. That's the NFL, and I love it.
Yeah, it's like, again, so basically the moral of the story is don't just look at film, guys. If you're just going to look at film, then you're going to alienate a lot of your other base. Look at stats, look at analytics, look at literally every single thing you have to offer. And you don't need to go all the way to a major public library to find that stuff. Because you can look at all that stuff online. It could be as simple as Wikipedia, but it could also be all these reference pages too, because those are the ones that do a lot of research as well.
Absolutely. All right, Vinny, it was good to talk to you. We're going to do this again pretty soon if you're up for it. My list of 100 players is probably going to be 125, ranked based on their current Hall of Fame resume will be coming out soon, and I'd love for you to walk that line with me.
That sounds fun. Make sure, and like I said before, don't just go off film. Don't just go off awards. Don't go off of success. Look at PFF. Look at Madden. Look at, what the players think. Look at what literally every single person and their 3-month-old kitten. Okay, ask the kitten what the kitten thinks. Basically, what I'm saying, ask everyone. Don't just look at one source. Look at literally everything. Look at what the nice guy thinks. Look at what the asshole thinks. Just look at every perspective, and that's how I would say make the conclusions. And also, one final thought. Shame on the voters for not campaigning for more seniors, especially during this time. And just before I go, I should ask you, for this year, because they're probably going to meet soon, what senior, coach, and contributor do you think will make it this year?
It's Tom Flores. For sure. It's going to be Tom Flores. I'm leaning towards Gradishar as the senior, and the contributor, I have no idea.
For me, I'd say they'll all be from 2020. Tom Flores is an obvious one for me. I mean, I was originally more with Coryell, but the reason why I swayed more to Flores is actually because of the Raiders thing, because they actually made a quality point. Because while Coryell changed the game for coaches and for coaching, Flores changed the game for an entire race of people.
He also won more. If you just want to chalk up.
That's also true.
Yeah.
But I think that in general is why he became over Coryell for me. As for seniors, if it's going to be one, it's going to be Gradishar. I know that Pearson was the one that most people talk about, but Gradishar was the biggest surprise I thought that didn't make it. And as for contributors, honestly, unlike you, I have no idea. They can go Bill Nunn. They can go Art McNally. They can go Ralph Hay. For all we know, they could piss off Browns fans and go Art Modell here. They could do whatever they want.
They could.
Honestly.
Yeah, I don't feel comfortable or not confident about anybody even remotely trying to guess what they're going to do. I do feel fairly confident in those two. Is it maybe also, am I a bit clouded because that's what I'm hoping will happen? Yes, but I think they're both excellent choices and the right choices.
Don't listen to what Peter King says about Tom Flores, because Tom Flores is deserving whether Peter wants to admit it or not.
Well, he's in that room and we're not. All right, Vinny, you stay safe and enjoy virtual school.
Yeah, it sounds good. Well, some may be virtual, but honestly, I don't know what's going to happen. And if I'm being really honest, I don't even think Oxford knows what they're doing either. So we're on the same boat here.
All right, sounds good. Stay safe.
Best of luck. You too, Kirk.
All right, bye. Thank you so much for listening. Hope everyone out there stays safe and look for new content regularly from us at notinhallofame.com.